Welcome to Battleground New York City, the fight for your vote. I'm S.E. Cupp. We are just 96 days away from the election for New York City mayor. That's 96 days, New York City, not 96 degrees. If you know, you know, there's a heat wave in New York and thunderstorms. New York City is a mess right now. And politically, too, this race is crazy. Um, 96 days may seem like a long time, and it can be in politics, but with the candidates jockeying for position in one of the most widely watched races in the country right now, every move is being watched and judged and scrutinized and studied. And that's exactly what we're going to do here every night at Battleground New York City. So, what is it that makes this race this year in this town so special and so important? And why should you care at home, even if you don't live in New York City? I'm Essie Cupp. Let's get right to it. Joining me now is Mr. New York himself, Errol Louis, a political anchor at Spectrum News and host of Inside City Hall. Errol, welcome to the show.
Great to be with you, Essie.
And you are, I say Mr. New York because this has been your beat for years. This is what you cover. You've hosted mayoral debates in this race. You're going to host another one in the fall. This is your Super Bowl, right?
Oh, absolutely. This is what I do. Ever since I got my first story published when I was 19 years old, never looked back. Have wanted to do this basically my whole adult life, and have interviewed the last five mayors, the last five governors, moderated debates for U.S. Senate, Attorney General, much of the City Council, and on and on and on and on. And yes, we will be moderating the general election debate come October. So it is a very exciting time if you care about New York politics.
And just from where you're sitting, like, is this a race unlike any other, or is this, kind of your typical mayoral race because you've covered them all?
Well, it is typical in the sense that it is absolutely unique, and there are going to be strange twists and turns before the votes are counted and the dust settles. And so, going all the way back to 1977, when shortly before the primary there was a blackout followed by
Right.
rioting in 1977. If you think back to 2001. 9/11 was a tragic day that changed history. It was also primary day in New York City.
Mm.
It was an election season, and frankly, the attack is widely credited with electing a Republican mayor, Mike Bloomberg, way back when. 2013 twist. What was the twist and turn then? There was a guy named Anthony Weiner who jumped into the race unexpectedly
Right.
in the spring of that year and scrambled all of the politics. Yeah, it's always something, and I'm not sure what the something is this time, but we're all kind of waiting for something to happen in the next few weeks.
Well, that's so interesting because, just looking at the polling, and according to some people we've talked to, Zoran Mamdani seems real likely to win this race. I've heard people call him a shoe-in. What's the twist that could upend that?
Anybody who's calling him a shoe-in is probably guessing more than anything else.
Say
Uh,
more.
he he. He's the Democratic nominee. The Democratic nominee normally wins. So at that surface level, sure, the odds are with him. There's a 6-1 registration advantage that Democrats enjoy here. But, there was a 20-year run that only ended relatively recently of Republican mayors of New York City.
Right.
So party label is no guarantee of success in New York. To make things a little bit more complicated, there are two independent candidates who are running. One is Andrew Cuomo, who was the governor for over 10 years, had worked on his father's statewide elections, had won statewide election himself as attorney general. So he's basically won 7 statewide elections. This is not somebody who's new to politics. And of course,
Right.
there's the sitting mayor, Eric Adams, who has control of the city's governmental apparatus and can command an audience on any given day. So this is far from over, and Zoran Mamdani should probably be getting up early and staying up late and trying to figure out how to bring this victory home.
Well, I love this, and I'm so glad you're here for all of this analysis. We're going to talk more about the candidates, but first, talk to me about New York voters. I lived in New York City for almost 15 years, um, but that was a while ago. What are New York voters looking for in this race?
Well, this is where it gets really interesting, Essie, because there's what I could tell you, what I could have told you before the primary would have been reasonably accurate for the last decade of who's likely to turn out. It tends to be older people. It tends to be people who are in union households. It tends to be people who are connected to the Democratic Party and registered. But Zoran Mamdani actually changed the script. He did what many insurgents and challengers talk about doing, but can never quite pull off, which is expanding the electorate, bringing new people in. So he
Yeah.
brought in a lot of young people who don't normally vote in big numbers. He brought in a lot of first-time voters, which is very hard to do, very hard to do.
Yeah.
And he's also kind of riding an ethnic wave. There's been a burst of activity among South Asian voters. That population has been growing. And he went out and he found, it seems, every last one of them,
Yeah.
at least the ones who are registered as Democrats, and he got them to turn out. Much harder than it appears, but he did all of that. And frankly, as an insurgent, that's what you have to do. If he'd played by the old rules, he would have gone down the way many first time candidates do. But he sort of flipped the script, and that's why so many people are paying attention to this race.
Yeah, I mean, I was looking at the turnout for the primary, and about an eighth of New York City's voting population voted that day, and half of them voted for Zoran Mamdani. So we got like a 16th of the eligible voting population. I assume that will expand in the general, but how can he reach voters he hasn't already? Because, from looking at his platform, he's reached the kinds of voters you'd expect him to reach, right? Students, young people. Um, how can he reach out to more New Yorkers who might not be in the sort of democratic socialist,
Mm.
wavelength already?
Sure. I mean, the Democratic primary voters who lifted him to victory were not the usual Democratic primary voters. As I said, much younger than normal, a lot of first time voters. He's got to broaden his coalition. He's got to
Right.
broaden and expand it. He's got a number of unions that have signed on with him, and those unions will be critical. He's
Mhm.
going to get another wave of enthusiasm from the existing base. So he's going to keep reaching out to young people, especially using social media. He's been very, very good at that.
Yeah.
He's going to find every last South Asian voter out there. He's their Barack Obama, and if they haven't already registered, they're going to either change their registration or get their registration papers in. That'll be good for a few thousand votes as well.
Yeah.
But then he's got to do the hard work. He's got to talk to some of the older voters. He's going to have to talk to some of the Jewish voters. He's going to have to talk to some of the groups where there's been a publicly expressed skepticism about his
Yeah.
candidacy and about his lack of experience, frankly. And if he can stitch that together, as well as take and accept and transform the Democratic brand, then he'll be on his way to victory. But there's a lot of obstacles out there. There are a lot of people who don't want to see those things happen.
How did you think he did in that press conference? He did it um from Uganda, where he recently got married, after the shooting in New York City. That was sort of a test for him. What did you make of that?
Yeah. Well, it's an interesting test because keep in mind this is the Democratic nominee. He hasn't been elected to any citywide office ever in his whole life. He's 33 years old, but there were a lot of headlines when he decided to take his newlywed bride and go back to the country of his birth, Uganda, and have a party and introduce her to some relatives and so forth and so on. So something any of us would do. It's
Yeah.
not that unusual for New York, but people were saying, "Where is he? Why would he leave the city at this time?" As if he was the sitting mayor.
Right.
So now, on one level, that's kind of a positive thing if people are already thinking of you that
Yep.
way. On the other hand, how do you meet those responsibilities when you don't have, a police detail and a salary and a staff that could support you acting like a mayor? And so I think he's growing up real quick, and I think it's
Yeah.
frankly one of the things that elections are good for is introducing candidates to the responsibilities that they think that they want to inherit. So I think he's getting a little taste of what it's going to be like to be mayor. Because as you know, Essie, anytime the mayor leaves the city and a snowflake falls, we all start we all start preparing the story about this is the Lindsay blizzard from the 1960s all
Right.
over again. Where's the
Right.
mayor? What's going to happen? So Zoran Mamdani's again getting an early taste of what that might be like.
We talked about 96 days that's both a lifetime in politics and around the corner, right? And you know what that means. I know what that means because we've covered politics. Can he sustain, right? I'm thinking back to like when Kamala Harris came in to the Biden campaign and there was that initial rush of donors and polling and it really injected passion into that campaign. It wasn't necessarily sustainable. Can Zoran Mamdani sustain this for 96 days?
What's interesting, Essie, is he might not have to. Meaning, he's if he can get 30 to 35% of the vote, and some early polling suggests that he's kind of in that zone right now.
Mhm.
Keep in mind who I mentioned: the sitting mayor, Eric
Yep.
Adams,
Yep.
Andrew Cuomo from a political dynasty, and we
Yep.
should mention that there is Curtis Sliwa, the Republican nominee, who actually ran for mayor 4 years ago and got something like 23, 25, 28% of the vote.
Right.
Now, if each of those candidates, quote unquote, pulls their weight, Zoran Mamdani could win with a plurality. This is a first past the post election. You don't have to get to 50%.
Right. Interesting. There's so much more to get to because, as you mentioned, there are other candidates other than Zoran Mamdani. We're going to talk about him. Errol, stay with me. We'll be right back with more Battleground New York City, the fight for your vote. We're back with Errol Louis, host of Inside City Hall. So, Errol, before the break, we were talking a lot about Zoran Mamdani. Let's talk about Andrew Cuomo for a minute. Um, I don't know if people know this. He was going to run for president. Like, that's the path he was on. He was on that trajectory. You mentioned he was a political dynasty, of course. Then some stuff happened. Okay. Some sexual harassment allegations, a nursing home scandal. How is he positioned now? I know you recently interviewed him a couple weeks ago. Like what's his mood? What's he feeling like? How is he positioned for this race now?
Well, what he's trying to do, Essie, is campaign in a way that he has never campaigned before, meaning shoe leather, retail campaigning, up close and personal, shaking hands, kissing babies. I watched him do it. We went back to the pizzeria a few blocks from the house where he grew up,
Mm,
and people just swarmed him.
hmm,
There were four generations of pizza makers. They all remembered him as when he was a kid. Um,
yeah,
and he's just doing a lot more of that. That's not normally how you can campaign in a big state like New York, and it's never how he has campaigned in the past. But he realizes now that he's got to, it's high tech versus high touch. He's got to get out and touch people, let them see him, let them say whatever it is they want to his
yeah.
face, so that there'll be less of this interpretation of what happened on the campaign trail. And he's actually pretty good up close. I was a little surprised because I'd never seen him do it before. But, at least in that section of Hollis, Queens, people liked him.
Are people buying? So Andrew Cuomo and Eric Adams are running as independents. Are Andrew Cuomo's from a Democratic dynasty, as you mentioned. Like, are people buying that these guys are doing anything other than just like this is a craven political play to stay in the race, or are people actually seeing Adams and Cuomo as something other
Well,
than
there's
Democrats now?
there's a couple of things that are going on. Number one is they themselves are typical New York successful politicians, meaning that they themselves are a brand. Like if I say AOC or I say Chuck Schumer, you
Yeah.
don't necessarily think of them as Democrats. They're who they are. And
Mm,
so Andrew Cuomo is a brand. He's a former three-term governor who was the son of a former three-term governor,
yeah.
who and that his father Mario Cuomo fondly remembered and was a Democratic Party icon. But it was really almost more like their personal name and brand is bigger than the party label in this case. I think
Interesting.
that at least that's what they're banking on, and I think it's probably a smart and reasonable bet.
You also recently sat down with Mamdani for an interview. What did you make of him face to face? People say he's very charming. That very much comes across in his ads and his social media. They
Yeah.
say he's smart. He talks like a normal person. What was your takeaway?
Yeah, it's interesting. I first encountered him. He got elected for the first time in 2020 at the height of the pandemic. Everything was on lockdown. I was sitting in my living room. He was sitting in his living room,
Yep.
and he came across as really quite personable. And as you know, Essie, it's rare to be able to project that through a screen, but
Yeah.
he does have that quality,
Mm,
which I thought at the time is like, he's going places. That's going to really work for him, and indeed it has. My sense of him right now is that he's got to adjust. he hasn't been in this game very long.
Hmm.
He came in through a social movement, the Democratic Socialists of America,
Hmm.
and some affiliated movements. And he is a movement leader who now wants to go from leading a movement to leading New York City, which is a much bigger, much more complicated task. And so I'd say he's in the process of reinvention.
Mm.
And it is absolutely fascinating to watch. As you and I know, those of us who have been in this game for a while, there's an expression that goes, before the election, you fight with your enemies. After the
Yeah.
election, you fight with your friends.
Right.
And you can already see the outlines of him needing to move beyond what a
Yeah.
movement leader does to what a city leader does.
Well, that's such an important point because, he is a self described democratic socialist. That scares a lot of people when they hear that. And there are pockets of New York City where that certainly works. But what about the places where it doesn't? What about Wall Street, for example? Wall Street's real scared of Mamdani.
Yeah.
There are places where opening government run grocery stores doesn't sound like a good idea. How does he pretend
Yeah.
he didn't say all the things he said about the police and everything else and do that pivot to the center to win a general election?
Well, it's interesting. I don't know if there needs to be a pivot to the center because what New Yorkers want above all else is authenticity.
Right.
And he has already signaled he's not dropping any positions. He's not disavowing anything he's ever said. Now, uh, something that he put on social media 5 years ago before he was elected to any office, how relevant really is
Mm.
that? Elections are about the future, not the past.
Yeah.
Um, it's hard to sort of know what to do with it. I think a lot of what's going on, Essie, interestingly enough, is some of the business leaders who don't like the fact that he identifies as a socialist, they're thinking about what their colleagues or maybe even their parents thought a socialist was,
Right.
which is very different from what a 33-year-old means when they say that they're a democratic socialist. I mean, there is no Soviet Union now. I remember when there was a Soviet Union. And
Yeah.
if you said you were pro socialist or pro communist, it meant something very specific that people could put their hands on.
Right.
It's just not like that now.
So what is it? What does he mean? What does he mean when he says that?
Well, some of it is a branding exercise, frankly. The way I think of it is they're a very liberal club that runs candidates in New York City. I mean, I don't know. to be honest with you, I mean, I've read deeply enough in this and encountered enough of it in the past that I've been asking the socialists for years now, hey, where's the socialism? I mean, five government-owned grocery stores. I thought you were going to tell me you were going to start 100 food cooperatives. What are
Yeah.
we talking about here? I mean, so a lot of this is symbolic. A lot of it is basically New Deal liberalism,
Uh-huh.
dressed up as something that seems to have panicked a lot of people, which,
Yeah.
as we know, young people like to specialize in doing,
Yeah.
scandalizing the elders. So
Yeah.
they've managed to do that. But look. Wall Street is going to continue to function. The banking system is going to continue to function. Most of the people here in New York are trying to make a living, and I don't think that's going to change. And he's got enough of that sort of immigrant DNA in him that he gets it. He gets it.
Well, we're going to see if he gets it because he's going to be tested over the next 96 days on this particular thing, I think, more than anything else. Errol, stay with me one more time. We've got one more break, and then I've got some more questions for you. Battleground New York City. We'll be right back. We're back with Errol Louis, host of Inside City Hall. Errol, we've talked about Cuomo. We've talked about Mamdani. What about Eric Adams? He's the incumbent. What's his problem? Why isn't he doing better?
He's had problems. He had a number of ethical scandals. He went through 4 different police commissioners. He's had a number of people who left under questionable circumstances. And
Yeah.
of course, he himself was indicted. And the circumstances under which that indictment was eventually dropped really led a lot of people to think that there's an implicit deal, or frankly, an explicit deal, according to the court, the judge who finally dropped the charges, with the Trump administration. Trump is extremely unpopular here. He lost New York City, the city of his birth, not once, not twice, but three times. So
Yeah.
Eric Adams was underwater even before he got arrested and indicted. He was polling at something like 23%
Mm.
even before he got indicted. Earlier this year, he was down there in the 28% range. So he's had a hard time. It was going to be tough for him under any circumstances. The biggest thing he's got going for him now is he has been trying to cultivate this idea that Mamdani is a threat to the city and must be
Mm.
stopped.
Right.
And he's making the case that he is the only one who can make that happen.
So interesting. Let's talk about the Democrats nationally because everyone's watching this. Democrats and Republicans are watching this race. Are the Democrats at risk of nationalizing this to a fault? Is New York City going to be a harbinger of midterms, for example?
Well, what's funny is that this is this is a set of trends that you and I have just talked about
Yeah.
that Democrats have been talking about for years. They've been
Uh-huh.
saying they want more young people to be involved.
Yeah.
They want new immigrants to get involved. They
Yeah.
want to bring new voters in. They want to change the composition of the electorate. And more than anything, they want to win. So now
Hmm.
here comes this candidate who gets more primary voters than we've seen in any New York City mayoral primary since 1989. And all he's getting is either a yawn or a lot of condemnation
Yeah.
or a mistaken assumption that he's good with videos because his mother was a filmmaker. And if I can put out some interesting creative YouTube videos, I too can succeed. All of which are the wrong conclusions.
Hmm. Yeah. And I'm just wondering, you know, for progressives, this rise of Mamdani is giving them permission to run progressive. But does that only work in New York City? If you're a Democrat in a red state, for example, if you're Andy Bashir, right? Um, what are you thinking about this race? Are you thinking this is bad for the brand? Are you thinking this is going to hurt me? Are you thinking this is great? Like we need the energy wherever we can get it.
Oh, you don't even have to go that far. I mean, if you're Andy Bashir, if you're Roy Cooper in North
Yeah.
Carolina, but frankly, if you're Hakeem Jeffries in Brooklyn,
Yeah.
uh, and you have a congressional district that Zoran Mamdani won handily,
Yeah.
he still hasn't made an endorsement.
Right.
Neither has Governor Hochul, neither has Senator Schumer. They're very wary about exactly what you're talking about.
Mm.
There's another theory out there, which is that they should throw caution to the winds and just go with
Mm.
what politicians normally do, which is go with the guy who has the hot hand. It's
Yeah.
it's very interesting. Zoran Mamdani actually is what the Republicans in conspiracy theories said Barack Obama was. He
Yeah.
is African born, he is Muslim, and he is a socialist.
That's amazing. You're so right.
I
Oh
think some of the
man.
older I think some of the older Democrats are a little leery of that. They don't want to actually embrace somebody who actually has all of what they alleged Barack
Really
Obama was. But
interesting.
but but Barack Obama won two terms,
Yeah, he
so
did.
maybe you go with it.
Still
Bernie
very
Sanders has
popular.
been reelected to every office you can think of in Vermont for decades.
That's right.
Maybe it's worth a look.
You mentioned the Republicans before we go. Republicans are watching this as well. And one theory of the case that I'm hearing from some Republicans is thank God for Zoran Mamdani. This is a great foil for us. We can paint the whole of the Democratic Party with Zoran Mamdani. What are you hearing?
Yeah, well, I think that they're wrong about that. Many of them have jumped out there and accused him of saying things that he never said. They're calling him a communist and all kinds of other things. And when they try and make him seem like a scary, dangerous threat, he has one of the weapons that worked well for Barack Obama, which is you look in the camera and you smile and you put everybody at ease
You're right.
and you realize the person's no kind of a threat at all. Remember Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was supposed to be the second coming of, Emma Goldman
Marx.
and was going to bring revolution to the United States.
Yeah.
And then you meet her and she's like a very charming, personable 30-something, young woman who's trying to make it in the world. And we all know people like that.
Yeah. Real quick before we go, Donald Trump's been talking about Zoran Mamdani. Is that good for Zoran Mamdani?
I think they're probably in a position where they're both raising money off each other. Nothing gets you faster in a Democratic primary in New York than to say that you're anti-Trump. And of course, for Trump to bash New York City and call it dangerous and say that it's being taken over by a socialist Muslim works for his base. So this is what happens in the world of modern politics.
Amazing. What does Zoran Mamdani have to do to either erase that sort of fear or lean into it real quick?
He's got to do something that mayoral candidates have done in the past, which is start indicating the kind of people they're going to have in their cabinet to give some sense of
Mm,
continuity and stability and competence. Because more than anything, the ideology that carries the day in New York is being able to run this place.
that's such smart advice. And I wonder if we'll start seeing Zoran Mamdani talk like that. Errol, thanks so much for being here and all of your great work. We'll have to have you back. That's show two, folks.